Tonight we have a ZBA meeting before our regularly scheduled meeting, but I'll just do it at this point. If I could remind everybody to please silence your cell phones or any electronic devices that you are using tonight. I also want to remind everybody that the public comment will be recorded, as our meetings are recorded and broadcast, so if you make a public comment, you will be recorded. And that's it. Next is roll call.
Blackburn,
Present.
Deroni,
Here.
Hageman,
Here.
Howard,
Present.
McAlexander,
Here.
Mashigian,
Here.
Miller.
Here.
All right, that's a quorum with 7 people.
Thank you. Next, we have the approval of the agenda for the ZBA meeting. Can I get a motion in a second?
So move.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next is the approval of the August 28th, 2023 meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
I so move that the minutes be approved.
I'll second. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have public comment. Is there any public comment for the zoning board meeting? Seeing none? For the ZBA meeting, we need to nominate officers, a chair and a vice. This is something we only do once or twice a year.
Ooh, excuse me.
Sometimes at the most. I would be happy to chair the meeting, but I am open for nominations.
I think we normally keep it pretty much the same, don't we? For
Mhm.
ZBA as well as council.
It just depends.
We do. The ordinance requires an annual.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't nominate myself. Anybody else wants to do it?
Can I do the,
I can. I
yeah.
so nominate Lisa Blackburn for chair of the ZBA.
Is there a second
I'll nominate DE.
for chair or vice chair?
What, Vice Chair?
Oh,
Oh, we're
this is
still
just
in
for
Still
chair.
in chair.
You have to vote.
Yep.
Well, we did
Yeah,
need a
second.
second first.
A second.
I'll second.
All right. Is there any other nominations for the chair?
There's no discussion we've had. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you for that. Next, we need to nominate a vice chair.
Just one more time. I will nominate DE
I
for
second.
Vice Chair.
I second.
Is there anybody else interested in nominating anybody? Seeing no discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Dee.
You're welcome.
We are moving on to case 2024-01. I know we do have a presentation that Ms. Renee Wenner came to present to us from Sinorama.
Hi, good
Hello.
night.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
My name is Renee Wenner from Sinorama in Troy. I am representing the Royal Thai Cuisine. It is a new restaurant opening at 30130 in Telegraph. Here today to petition to have a illuminated wall sign, a second wall sign, over a side-facing facade that is not over a main entrance. We already have approval for a west-facing signage that is going to be visible from the Telegraph Road. The customer, at this time, for budgetary reasons, would like to forego the sign over the rear entrance where the parking is located and instead have a sign on the south elevation, which is not over a main entrance, but is very visible from Telegraph when you're driving by. So this would allow, from a corner perspective, for there to be a wall sign on the west and south-facing facades. The existing tenant is a Noodles & Company. They had 3 wall signs on their facade, one as well on the south elevation. We realized that it is not no longer in code. It does seem as if the code has changed recently, and so the south sign is not approved, but we are asking for our tenant to have this additional signage. Specifically for their business, the signage is going to be fairly small, very fit in line with the design concept, and just help their visibility for this new restaurant.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Okay, because we're going to open a public hearing and then
Okay.
we'll discuss.
Sure.
So you can,
I'll note the time.
right. And then if we have questions, we'll invite you back up to the
Okay.
podium. I am going to open the public hearing for case 2024-01 at 7:06 PM.
I have a question for Ken. Can you confirm if the ordinance is changed from?
Wait. This is the public hearing, and then we'll have discussion with the board after. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
This is just for this is the public, and then we'll discuss after. Sorry, but
No. no,
is there
please.
anybody from the public that would like to come up and discuss this? Nope. Okay, I am closing the public hearing at 7:07 PM. And now we will have board discussion. So Ken, can you kind of give a little bit more of a background, and then
Sure.
Evgeny, if you want to go over your findings as well, that would be helpful.
So you have a memo in your packet that kind of explains all of this, and in addition to the memo, there's a couple of exhibits as well. One of the attached exhibits is the application, another one is the mailed published notice, one is the applicant signage plans, and one is the historical documents regarding Noodles & Company. The ordinance, not to argue with Ms. Wenner, the ordinance didn't change. We always have not allowed a sign above an entrance or a side that doesn't have an entrance. It's been like that since 2012, apparently. And despite that, Noodles & Company was given permission to hang a sign on that side. And that's fine. It's been there for 10 years. Now that Noodles is gone, it's gone too. But we have talked about this here in the office quite a bit, and we really can't see any reason for why this should be opposed. I don't see any reason at all. It's a commercial district. We want folks in the commercial district to succeed, and I think signage is part of that. I really can't see why we wouldn't have this, and perhaps if we want to entertain this later on, we can amend the ordinance to just kind of remove this. There's only a handful of properties in the FCO. There's only a handful of businesses in the FCO. I can't see this as resulting in an overabundance of signage. I think that's about it. If you have any specific questions, I can certainly answer them or try to.
I would agree.
Okay.
And I think
And I do have a question, though. I drove in there today, and I see that Mandaloon is going to become Smalls,
I saw that myself.
SMALZ.
Yep.
And that, I had to look 3 times to see the name of that restaurant because it's so muted in a dark gray against a black background. I'm just saying that if we're going to be talking about an ordinance change, I can anticipate they are going to come to us. So with that in mind, with allowing this deviation from the ordinance, does that in any way open Pandora's box for what might be requested for Smalls to have visibility?
That's an easy one, not at all, because they're not in the FCO district. They're in the commercial 1 district behind it, which is the ordinance that we're not touching.
Yet.
Well, the discussion that's proposed today is for the FCO signage
Okay.
only. I mean,
Well, I think we always have to consider what's the downside.
Mhm.
You know, and I'm certainly not ignoring that there could be problems. I'm just looking at this as being an opportunity for commerce.
Right.
And I think it's important that we help to promote business any way that we can without violating rules. And we've already had a sign up on that wall. Did we get any complaints?
No.
Okay. And I know what you're saying, but I just think it's
No, I want to say the
important.
positive side of
Yeah.
it too, which is we have to drive business to a brand-new restaurant.
Exactly.
And they may have to place a freestanding manual sign separate from any building in this district where we're talking about the change. I mean, when Mandaloon was here, where was a sign?
Didn't they have a monument sign right
Yes,
on
they
Telegraph
do.
Road? Yeah.
They do, and it's still there.
Yeah.
It's still there.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I would believe that Smalls has designs on,
Doing something there as
yeah,
well.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, there's a monument right on Telegraph Road.
Yeah,
And does that space fall under this ordinance?
no.
Okay. Okay.
We can certainly expand on that because we have a sign ordinance discussion later in the council meeting tonight,
Okay.
and I can certainly provide you with more details.
Okay.
But, yeah, not at all.
I just wanted to ask our attorney if you see any sort of, anything that you would like
I
to
do not.
discuss about this?
I don't see any problems. The standard that you have to find is that there's an undue hardship that's unique to this property and/or this building, so. But no, I don't see a downside to it.
I mean, I feel like we're all probably on the same page. I mean, I don't know why the ordinance was written the way it was written way back when. I also, the sign was put up there regardless. This new business is coming in. We definitely want to help support the businesses in any way we can. It only makes sense that you would see the name of the restaurant as you're driving north or south to our business area on Telegraph. And so, unless anybody else has anything else to say, I mean, I feel like this is pretty cut and dried,
Yeah.
this decision.
So essentially, we're going from 3 signs to 2.
Correct.
Yes.
They had 3, the old.
So Noodles had
had
3 signs. Right.
And they are only
gonna have
asking,
2. And it looks like it's a little bit even smaller than what Noodle and Company had.
Looks like it
would
was.
appear to me so too.
Yeah. Is there one also, is the sign that's on the west side, is that temporary or is that, we just drove by it today, it seemed as if it was is that temporary or is that?
There is a temporary sign there now. The
Okay.
west sign is in production. It's going to be installed next week,
So
actually.
it's gonna be similar to what we have, what was presented to us here?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep,
so it's
very
basically
similar in
the same
size.
side, both sides?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Just as a note, the sign that's facing Telegraph, the one that will be installed, was approved by the planning commission some time ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I figured because of what we have here, what was shown, it was very similar to that.
Right.
Yeah.
So then I would ask if there's a motion to grant this variance.
There's a sample motion for someone to follow on the bottom of the memo that I wrote in the packet.
I move to approve a variance to Chapter 98.04, allowing a wall sign to be installed on a facade of a building without a public entrance. In this case, the south facade of 30130A Telegraph.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations. Thank you so much for coming.
I will get this signed and over to you tomorrow.
I appreciate it.
All
Thank
right.
you so much, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for coming.
Of course.
Okay, then I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
So the ZBA meeting. Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned at 7:15 PM. Thank you all. $7:15 is the adjournment. Adjourned. Thank you. It's 7:16. I'd like to call the monthly regular council meeting to order. Roll call.
Blackburn.
Present.
Deroni.
Here?
Hageman.
Here.
Howard.
Here?
McAlexander.
Here.
Mishigian.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
All right, that's a quorum with 7.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda for today's council meeting.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next is the approval of the meeting minutes for the regular village council meeting of October 28th, 2024. Is there a motion?
Also move?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve the organizational village council meeting of November 18th, 2024?
I move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next is public comments not on the published agenda. Any public comment? Seeing none, we're going to move to discussion topics and start with our police department. Chief Lawson is here. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Nice to see everybody and our 3 new members. As most everyone knows, I'm always available. If you have any questions, you need to talk to me about something, feel free to call, stop by the office. Since I've been here since January, but been the chief since middle of August, and it's almost every day that a new person stops in to see me, so I'm always available. So. I have an update on an investigation I'm not sure if you're all aware of that began before I even arrived here at Franklin Bingham Farms, but in November 11th, right around that time in 2023, we began an investigation on an embezzlement. It was alleged that the former CEO of the Lupus Foundation, based right here in Bingham Farms, had embezzled right about $103,000 from the organization. This occurred from May of 2015 through March of 2022. Our investigation concluded this past June 4th in 2024, and we turned our investigation over to the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office. They did issue a 1-count felony warrant. It's a 10-year felony for embezzling from a nonprofit, so I don't suggest it. At the time of our investigation, we knew the suspect was living in Peru, the country of Peru. So I wasn't going to send my officers to Peru to get him. I know that's not in the budget. But working with our federal partners, we were able to flag all entry points into the United States. So thankfully, this past Sunday, our suspect flew to Washington, D.C., and he was arrested on our warrant. And having a good relationship with other jurisdictions that we have, the Oakland County Fugitive Apprehension Team agreed to go get him and brought him back. And that suspect's currently sitting in Oakland County Jail. He was arraigned today, so that criminal process will be ongoing. But I think it was a really big win for the police department. There was a lot of work on that case, a lot of search warrants. Anything to do with embezzlement and fraud is just paperwork. So a great job by the team. And with that, is there any questions on our monthly report?
I just have one that I've
Sure.
not seen before because you're doing another detailed report.
So, yeah, so the report that you're seeing here is not the finished product. What we're trying to give you is a little bit more detail and a little bit easier for you to read. I like being data-driven, but I think before it was a little bit difficult to kind of comprehend what was going on. So if you have any suggestions, we certainly will take it.
Well, I was just curious that you have a category under total incidences within the SAD that's a hospice death, and there have been 3.
Yes.
What is that?
So it's a memory care facility?
Arden Courts.
Arden Courts.
Arden Court.
That's in the essay.
I'm
That is
thinking
in the SAD.
about the office building. How did that happen? Oh, okay.
You're not the first one that asked me that. So.
Could you guys parenthesis Arden Court?
Sure.
Because people like me are a little dense, so, all right, thanks. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Next is our fire department monthly report by Chief Everbuck.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
You also have our written report. I'd like to welcome the new council members, and just as the police chief indicated, please, if you have some free time, give me a call so I can explain to you how the fire department operates, how we're set up, how we're staffed, and answer whatever questions you have. For Trustee Hageman, congratulations, you are our new fall guy. I'm sorry, you're...
I was going to say, I don't know if it's a curse or not.
Time will tell. Our meetings are the third Monday of the month at 7:30 p.m. I have your email address already, so I'll be emailing out copies of the report and the agenda as well. The only thing that I'd like to include, otherwise than what is listed in our monthly report, is that we're seeing with the temperatures going down, furnaces turning on, we're seeing a slight uptick of carbon monoxide type runs. The majority of them are false alarms. So this is just one of those pieces of advice to anyone watching, that if you have a carbon monoxide detector, make sure it's operational, make sure it is within 10 years old, or whatever the manufacturer recommends, because the detectors do go bad over time, and make sure that if it is battery operated, that the batteries get changed. So quite often we have the alarms go off just because the battery itself is dying. Other than that, and pending your questions, that'll conclude my report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Moving on to the manager's report.
Yeah, I have a couple of things I want to highlight here besides what's written down. First is that in your weekly memo that I sent around, some of you guys got it for the first time, I had a wrong date in there. The village council meeting for December is just so I don't screw this up again, let me bring up my calendar.
16th.
It's on the 16th. I believe on in my weekly memo, I said it was on the 18th.
Yeah.
Please, please, please don't come on Wednesday the 18th. It is on the 16th. And obviously that'll conflict with your first fire commission meeting, DE. But anyway, that's that. The other thing that I think is really, I'm kind of excited about to tell you guys is this portal that Hubble, Roth, and Clark created, which is uploaded to our website, that will allow us to gather more information about roads and drainage. We are going to demonstrate it right now, I believe, as long as we can get the monitor to work, to show everybody exactly how this functions. So this allows for residents to report issues as HRC prepares its final plans and design plans that will go out for bid eventually. So you can on the front page of the website, you see a little pop-up box in the lower right-hand corner. That's one place to access the portal. The other place, if you could scroll down a little bit, is in the news right there. And either way, either one, if you just click on the box, and I'll let you take it from there, Jeff.
Thank you. So yes, whichever way you get to this page, you will see this little paragraph explaining what this is, as well as a link to that feedback portal that HRC set up for us. It looks a lot like our village webpage, and if you scroll down, it's going to give you a little information about the phase 1 of the roads project and a little bit about how this whole feedback system works. So once you've read through that, keep scrolling down. Over here where it says map your comments, you would click here to open the mapper, and that will take us, it does sometimes take a minute to load, but it takes us to, this page right here. The first pop-up that you see will give you instructions on how to submit a report. Now, in order to actually interact with the page, you do have to close these instructions, but don't worry, you can always bring them back with this little question mark in the upper right. So if you're not sure where you are in your steps, just bring that back up for yourself. Once we get here, you will see that we have a map of the village with the roads that are part of phase 1 highlighted in that kind of bolded outline here. And if you are ready to submit an observation, you would click on Submit an Observation in the bottom right here, which opens up a little survey for you to fill out. But before you get there, you can actually click on this interactive map, so you can drag the map around to wherever you are. You can zoom in and out as much as you need to. And let's, just for an example, I'm going to pick on Trustee Michigan here. Let's say we have an issue in front of our house, right? As an example, let's say I spotted a pothole or a drainage issue or what have you. Right, I would click right there, creates a little circle, and then I would fill it out. Right, select whether it's road condition or drainage issue. You would add additional details, severely distressed pavement or structure concern. That's if we are in road condition. If it's drainage, we've got standing water ditch condition, culvert function, or maintenance concern options. You can include additional details. You do not have to fill out your name, phone number, and email, but HRC strongly encourages you to do so because then they are able to follow up with you. Over here, if you're not sure if you clicked on the right positioning, down here, once you've clicked on the map, down here it gives you the approximate address. So if you're a little bit off, that can be a little guide for you to help figure out where to really leave that dot. And if you wish, you can even upload a photo with this browse button. So obviously I don't have a photo to upload right now, and I'm not going to be doing an actual report here, but this is the process. So I would hit browse, upload that, hit report it, and then that dot will remain on that map. Anytime anybody goes back to look at it, they will see that it was submitted, they will see details on it, and I would double check with HRC if this is correct, but if I'm understanding correctly, you will see additional notes pop up there as HRC does their due diligence on their side. So I think they will have updates like somebody came out to take a look at it, things like that. Any questions?
I think it's kind of neat.
So this just went live just a couple days ago. So our intention is to get the word out. So if you're talking to your friends and neighbors and they're have a concern about the road, please refer them to our webpage where they can go through these steps. And then we're also going to be doing an updated newsletter, roads newsletter, which is going to go to every single house. We're going to mail them out.
Hard copy mail
To everybody's house. And so this, obviously, this information will be included in that.
Good, good. That's good, very good.
No, it's a good job.
Yeah.
Last thing, just to mention, the yard waste collection, the last day for that is Thursday, December 12th. If anybody's watching, make sure to don't put any bags out after that date. And this week, in case someone's watching, between now and Thursday, trash day is moved to Friday because of Thanksgiving and the Lions game.
Of course.
Thank you all.
If anybody has questions on that portal, they can also call the office and...
We can walk you through it.
Yeah, any one of the staff can walk you through the steps.
I do have a question about the grant application for Timber Trail. Have you been in touch with the granting office to see?
Not since it's been submitted, no.
Okay, so you have
I
no...
don't know where they are, or they usually don't tell you ahead of time.
Oh, no, but I mean, just to say, if there are a lot of funds available at this time, or what the condition of your request might be, how much
I have
competition you
not
might
been
have.
Since we've submitted.
Okay.
Your note seems a bit skeptical about it, though. Am I reading that correctly?
Well, typically speaking, communities that are well off and that are under their cap
Right,
typically aren't necessarily granted these large sums of money.
Yeah.
So I remain cautiously hopeful, I guess.
Access to transit grant. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. That,
That's just one.
okay. So there are other possibilities?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess it depends on how you define transit.
Yeah.
Could that include walking?
Well, I guess that's how it has to be written.
Yeah.
We'll go for anything we can
Yeah,
possibly get.
Mhm.
I think so.
All done?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Evgeny, with the Economic Development Coordinator Administrative.
All right.
Assistant report.
Well, the biggest update to my written report is that 25 minutes ago, the ZBA approved signage for you guys were all there. Other than that, I'm happy to take any questions on my written submission.
Talk a little bit more about Smalls and what you know about them.
At the moment, I really don't know much. I did speak to a contractor that's working with the restaurateur that's behind this endeavor. I know that the owner has experience in the restaurant business, owning multiple restaurants in the Metro Detroit area. None of them are chains, so all of them are small, locally owned restaurants. The most recent update is that we had a contractor call asking for a specific renovation permit last week. I directed them to Southfield's building department, who does permitting for us. So that indicates to me that they are plugging along on their renovation, and I'm sure they'll be in touch, because the last time I spoke to the main project manager, he said that he'd be happy to collaborate with us on some sort of either soft or a grand opening. Perhaps we can even put them in touch with the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber at that point and arrange for ribbon cutting similar to what just took place at Bingham Center.
Have we ever done things with new businesses to encourage our own residents to frequent those businesses? For example, offer a 10% discount to, our residents for the first 30 days that the restaurant is open, or something to that effect. Some kind of marketing tools to just get people in there to pass on good words.
Well, we've never done that, but I would imagine it's up to the business to offer that. We can certainly pitch that idea to them once we talk about their soft open and see how they feel towards that idea.
Mhm. Because, that's probably one of the only local establishments for us to go out and get a quick bite to eat. So having the Bingham Farms residents be proponents of it would be a really good thing.
Absolutely.
I wish there was an entrance we could get you off at 13. Back driveway, so we don't have to go on a telegraph and, all the traffic and.
You can walk.
Think
They can
about
park
it,
here.
You can walk.
Yeah.
You walk off the calories.
No.
I do feel like when other restaurants have opened in the past, we have gotten coupons
Yeah.
just in the mail. Just, I don't know how many communities around us have gotten them, but I feel like I've gotten coupons for the restaurants that.
Well, if we do a quid pro quo with, let's do a feature article in our newsletter about
Yeah.
you, or something like that, which goes to all the residents, so we advertise you, and you in turn.
That could be a regular column featuring a restaurant that's located in Bingham Farms to help promote locals going there, not just the traffic on Telegraph. So that might
We'd
be,
be happy to do
it's a
that.
good idea.
Anything else you've getting?
A quick question.
Yes, sir.
So you talk about business license. To me, it seems very good that we've had 292 business license, I guess, renewed this year. You've got more new ones on top of that, 12. That's a lot more than we had last year. But then there's 134 that have left since 2020. Do you know how all that nets out? Is the village doing really well with business license right now? Because 2020
This
was
year, we
the
clearly
COVID.
did well. I'm getting ready to restart that cycle again in January, so if any business owners in the village are watching this meeting, You'll be getting my email to remind you to renew first week in January like usual. So we'll start that count all over. As far as whether or not we're doing well or not, we started this program in 2020, so you can imagine how
Well, that's
unreliable
exactly
the
the point,
numbers are
because
from
I
the
think
first couple of years of
There's
that.
still maybe a black cloud of what's going to happen with commercial real estate when leases expire and so forth going forward.
Correct.
So, yeah.
So between the business license numbers and the chart of building occupancy that I provided, it seems that our buildings, for the most part, are staying
pretty good,
fairly
yeah.
solid and occupied. The buildings that have had the most tenant losses and issues are obviously the biggest buildings.
Yeah.
So south of 13, those are the ones where you see some of them dipping down into the 60s or the 70% of
Also the
occupancy
oldest.
rates. Keep in mind that some of those businesses that have moved out of the village are also part of your regular cycle of operations.
Exactly, yeah.
People retire. I know specifically the big office building south of 13 had a lot of offices that were solo practitioner attorneys or CPAs or accountants. So when those people either during the pandemic decided that they no longer need to keep office space or they retired, that accounts for a lot of businesses closing, even though the space that was lost wasn't very much if somebody was renting an office with a desk and a chair. So,
Yeah, and I guess technically a building could claim occupancy, but nobody's even using it because they're having to pay rent on a lease.
correct.
There's a shadow lease.
Yes.
Exactly.
Shadow vacancies have also been a bit of an issue, and I think we're starting to plateau out from
hope
that,
so, yeah.
in the sense that a lot of those are starting to run to the end of their lease, and that gives the building owners an opportunity to attract new clients as well.
So the other issue is, as I mentioned, the 4 buildings, the larger ones, are some of the oldest. They've been around since the 80s. I haven't been in them for just a few years, but I remember thinking they could use a little freshening up. Is that something that the owners or the leasing companies have discussed with you, or you've discussed with them?
No, because that's generally more so their
Hands off?
business.
Yeah,
that's not
I'm-
business.
Yeah, no. You know,
But,
the relationship that you have with
But
them
as far
is
as just having conversations, I know, for instance, the manager of Bingham Center next door here, that's the biggest office building here in the village. He's told me that one of the reasons that they've been able to maintain their occupancy and profitability is they upkeep their building for sure. I know last year they just got new air conditioner units on top. There was a whole crane set up and everything. And the reason that they're able to keep their occupancy so high despite having such a large footprint is because they actually haven't bit the bullet and done the reno yet.
Yeah.
Therefore, they can keep their leases low. And that attracts people at the moment.
Sure.
So I would say it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Good job.
Yes, people could remodel a building, but then their rents would have to go up, and I think some of them are opting for attracting customers that they can get now rather than buying into a huge project without knowing if it's going to pay them off yet.
Yeah, this is a competitive marketplace.
Mhm.
You're right, so.
Okay, we're going to move on to new business, and we'll start with the 2025 Village Council meeting calendar. So we do this every year at this time. We will need a motion. Some of the dates you see, which is explained in the packet, move because of holidays. Other than that, we pretty much try to stick to a regular schedule.
It kind of messes me up with fire, but that's
It does, yeah.
I see that the Christmas, December 22nd, is the week of the holiday, correct?
It is, yeah, because obviously, if that's a Monday, then Christmas Eve is Wednesday, so we'll be here, for those couple of days before Christmas Eve.
But this year, we bumped it back to the 16th,
Right, this year we did,
so, because it's 1 day difference, basically, so that's enough
yeah.
to pour it over, okay. I move that the council meetings calendar for 2025 be accepted.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next is the Planning Commission appointments. So there are 2 spots on Planning Commission that are open, or were open for 2 different reasons. Trustee Deroni was on the Planning Commission, and so moving to council leaves his seat open on planning. And Brian Beaver's term, 3-year term had expired, and so he has asked to still be placed and appointed to, or reappointed to a 3-year term on Planning Commission. The other spot that was left open by Trustee Deroni, our outgoing council member Debbie Hedge would like to try planning, and so she applied to planning. And so we luckily have filled both seats with no absences, ongoing absences. And so I would like to move to appoint first Debbie Hedge to a 3-year term to fill that seat. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. I also would like to make a motion to reappoint Brian Beaver to a 3-year term on Planning Commission. Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. So I would like to thank both of them for stepping up to lend their time and talent to the Planning Commission. It's great that we will continue to have a lot of experience on that board. Next is the obligation of remaining ARPA funds. And Bill, would you like to introduce this?
Yes, the obligation of remaining ARPA funds. First of all, good evening, and congratulations and welcome to the 3 new trustees. In your packet, you'll find a proposed resolution, my memo, again, along with a proposed resolution, to obligate or commit the remaining ARPA funds. So just in the way of a little bit of a briefing, the village during the COVID pandemic received $120,641.85 of ARPA funds that were given out throughout the U.S., and that was our portion that broke down from the state of Michigan. Part of the requirements, I should say, not recommendations, but requirements is that on a yearly basis, we have to report how much we've used and where we're at with it. Now that it's coming to the end of this calendar year, they're asking us to commit and or obligate whatever is remaining, to let them know that it's obligated or committed before December 31st of this year. And obviously, if it's not passed or not obligated or committed, then they have the right to take those funds away from us. The remaining funds that we have, as stated in the proposed resolution, is $40,224.08. Other than that, you could read through the resolutions, but it's pretty straightforward. And my recommendation, obviously, is we don't want to lose the money. We want to commit and obligate it so that we're able to use it. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So you've got a budget that obviously budgets many things, including salaries and benefits.
Yes.
So this $40,000, how does that work? Is it going to offset is it going to have an offset to the budget? Because this is money that's been provided by the government?
Right. So first of all, as it's been explained to me and as I've read through it and as our external auditor has read through it and explained it to me, is that we put the funds in as we actually obligate and commit and spend them. Then it goes from one line item into the revenue line item because we hold it together along with.
So it does go into revenue?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And what this accomplishes is of what we have not spent and that's remaining, it gives us the flexibility to use it and to obligate it so that we can spend it on the required or the information or items that the grant or the funds are actually able to be spent and used on. So what it does is it gives us the $40,224.08 to be able to use and spend on items that we have a lot, obviously, throughout the year.
No, I think it's great. I mean, a lot of us participated in all kind of plans to survive during COVID, so it's
Correct.
It's good. But it went into revenue, and you can't use it for anything you want to, but you can use it to offset
Yes.
other budgeted items.
Correct.
That's great. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And again, what this is there's, from the initial portion of when the government came out with this, they've had changes to it. There was a number of changes as they kept revising what you can do with the money, what you can't do with the money, how you have to report it, and all of that. So this came about as other municipalities throughout the state have been using this obligation, proposed amendment, to be able to obligate and commit it so that they're able to use those funds.
Good.
So do we know where we're going to obligate it to?
Yes, we will absolutely find a spot for us to obligate it.
No big raises, Bill.
No.
Because here, if I'm reading this right, eligible workers investing in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. So does that mean we could fill it into the roads?
We can use it. I mean, obviously, before, anytime any type of bill comes in, I always ask the question, I review it with Ken, we sit down, and then I review it to make sure that it's an expense that we can use, either through, we have one grant from Oakland County that we're using, and the ARPA funds. So we go through that and make sure that, one, we're able to use it for that specific expense, and we will definitely find there's more than many homes that we can park and use this for.
Okay.
Right. There are guardrails on it.
Yeah.
When it was given, there
I would assume so, yes.
were, the government put guardrails on it, so.
They've loosened them up over time.
Yes.
frankly, But
Okay.
nevertheless,
You still have to abide by what.
I'm pretty sure raises aren't included in that.
No, but when I saw infrastructure, that
Yeah.
immediately, okay.
Right.
So, if
What do you need from us?
there's no other, I need a resolution, which is,
Someone to offer the resolution and someone to second
Second.
the offering, and then we will do a roll call vote.
I also move.
I'll second.
any further discussion? Roll call.
Okay. Miller,
Approved.
Mashigian,
Agree, yes.
McAlexander,
Yes.
Howard,
Aye.
Hageman,
Aye.
DeRoney,
Aye.
Blackburn.
Aye.
I thought I would trip you all up. Thank you all. Okay.
Thank you for
I will
that.
take, and we will certify this tomorrow. We'll take care of it.
Okay,
All right.
next is the commercial overlay sign ordinance discussion. Who wants to take that?
That's you again.
I'll introduce that. Okay, so going off of our variance request in the ZBA and the memo that I wrote, we can get a little bit deeper into the sign ordinance here. If you read my memo, I explained in there that currently we don't have a separate section in our sign ordinance that governs signage in the frontage commercial overlay district, which includes those three buildings, the Noodles and Jimmy John's, which is now Royal Thai and Jimmy John's, the Rusty Bucket, and then the Qdoba building right next door to here. Altogether, they have space for 7 businesses. It's not a lot by any means. And because it's such a small district, that is why a sign ordinance was never made for it. So we just said, well, you're in the commercial district, we're going to use the commercial district standards to govern your signs, which is why we ran into this issue. So I didn't want to include this in the packet because this was not an official submission since it was denied, but I'm going to pass these around. These are the signs from Jimmy John's and Royal Thai Cuisine that were submitted to us and were denied because of this ordinance. And by denied, I mean in the preliminary review by our office, I saw that they were overshooting the limitations we have. I let the contractors know about that, and they proceeded to redesign and resubmit the signs. For example, the sign you saw for Royal Thai earlier tonight. If you look at those signs, you will see that the Jimmy John signs on there are identical to the Jimmy John signs on the building right now. The reason they were denied is because they were like 6 inches bigger than what our ordinance allows for. And the reason that that limit is so small is because in the commercial district, we have primarily 4-story buildings. On those, having a 12% of the building height limitation and 15% of the building width limitation on signs makes a lot of sense, because you don't want a building size poster board like the Chrysler building up on 75, right? Maybe you do, but a lot of people in this community don't, right? But, so as a result, we have these signs that I don't think anybody here would oppose on those buildings getting denied, because we have the standard that's made for crazy large buildings compared to these 1-story outlots. So anyways, attached you also have the current text of the ordinance, which has the specific standards I'm referring to highlighted. The biggest things I see as a detriment to the businesses trying to move into these outlot buildings are that vertical and horizontal percentage limitation, and the case we saw earlier today about no signs on a building side with no entryway. Again, for a 4-story building with hundreds of offices, you don't want a sign for a business when they're on the opposite side of that 4-story building and people walking in getting lost, right? Here, if you get lost, you're talented. So that's really my intro. I really think that other than the wall sign requirements, everything else can be boilerplate from the other districts, because monument signs are monument signs. The same standards can certainly be applied to those. Directional signs, same thing, are perfectly fine the way they are in the commercial district. And my suggestion is basically using some of the samples from surrounding generally accepted ordinances for these kinds of buildings. I provided some examples from Birmingham, Bloomfield, Berkeley. I have Beverly Hills, Northville, Southfield Township, and Troy on there, because I was just thinking of cities where I've seen either outlot buildings like that or shorter 1- or 2-story downtown areas with not a lot of frontage space, and I wanted to see what they do for their signage. And it seems like a really popular standard for commercial districts like this is to limit the square footage to 1 square foot per 1 linear foot of frontage. So if you have a 40-foot storefront, you have a 40 square foot sign limit. And as long as you're not putting it above the roof line or anything like that, you can make that sign whatever shape you want, because we assume people want attractive signs to attract people to their businesses. So as you can see, we don't normally see anything outrageous being submitted there.
I have a question on the monument signs in section B2, I guess. Let me just,
Okay.
and it, again, going back to Smalls and what may or may not be occurring with them wanting visibility on a monument sign.
Okay.
Right now, the monument sign still shows the previous tenant. What about a small guy wanting to be on the monument sign as well?
Define small guy wanting to be, well, that actually, at that point, that's between the building owner and the small guy. Because we approve, we as the village, we approve the monument sign designs based on our limitations. Who goes on the sign is up to the owner of the sign, which is the building owner.
But like if the Rusty Bucket wants their name on a monument
They're
sign,
in the-
even though they're in that special district,
Right.
this,
6 signature tenants.
do we have to address that in this ordinance in some way, saying that
We certainly can if you'd like to. I was concerned with wall signs because that's where I saw the issue happening in this district. Rusty Bucket being right at the roadside, they've been there for quite some time. They've never once requested a monument sign, so I don't see somebody.
if the monument sign is to
In
the
that-
south of their buildings, and you want to know that Rusty Bucket is going to be coming up before you actually see it. You know, they may say, hey, I'd like advance warning that we're down the road just a piece. I don't know. I'm just speculating.
No, I understand.
That if we start opening up Pandora's box with this.
I mean, the way the ordinance is right now, nobody's stopping Rusty Bucket from applying for a monument sign as we stand right now and putting one up on their lot. So if you'd like to change that, that's well within the council's right.
They wouldn't be able to put a sign south of the property they're on. That would be like a billboard or something like that. We wouldn't allow that, and I don't think anybody who owns property south of there would be interested in the first place. See what I mean?
Yeah.
They couldn't position something beyond their own frontage, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I'm just trying to think of, you know, once you start getting competition for eateries and things like that, they say, okay, let's just see how far can we push this, what could we do? And Rusty Bucket does have a little bit of property that's covered by some trees. And those trees sort of, until you're closer, they sort of, prohibit the fact that you know that it's there.
Sure. So what, I guess what's the question?
Well, would we want a lot of monument signs all along Telegraph?
We currently allow one monument sign per building. The most Rusty Bucket would be allowed to do would be a monument sign that says Rusty Bucket in front of their building.
In front of their own building, okay.
Yeah, and nobody's proposing changing that at this point in time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just for commercial area anyway, not the outlots.
Because the outlots are currently governed by the commercial area standards, they are allowed to have a monument sign just like the commercial area standards. So again, if you would like to remove their ability to have monument signs while creating a standard for the FCO separately, we can certainly discuss that. That's just not something I focused on in my research.
Right.
I was under the understanding that they weren't part of the commercial area, that they were a separate area.
They're an overlay district. That's why it's a little bit like that, and that's why I'm proposing separating that, because we have that little overlapping standard that creates a bit of a headache with the wall signage. As it stands right now, the buildings with Qdoba have a monument sign.
They do.
And they have all their tenants on their monument sign because they're in the C1 district and they're allowed to have a monument sign.
You can currently have up to 6 tenants on one of those signs.
Okay.
Well, I don't know how other council members, but monument signs are getting closer and closer to the road, and,
And they have a limit on how close they can get to the road in our ordinance, and
there is illumination.
yes, because that's also provided for in the ordinance. I don't know that they're keeping closer and closer to the road. And I mean, monument signs by definition need to be by the road because that's where you get visibility. So.
Yeah.
So what we're seeking really today is basically permission to sort of go forth with the amendment. We don't necessarily need a motion for that tonight, do we?
No, we can continue discussing this.
Right.
Like my proposed motion was just in case everybody looks at it and says, wow, great, let's do 1 square foot per linear foot, let's do that, and we can direct Dirk to start writing stuff up. If not, if we need more discussion, we can take as long as we need to. This was just my findings dealing with these couple sign submissions in the recent past and
I would
bringing this
propose
to your
that we
attention.
get a little time to be able to drive down Telegraph
there.
and see what's there and say, what if they decided to do one here, and the next guy decided to do one here, and the next guy decided to do one?
To do what?
Monument
Put another
signs.
monument up.
Okay, the amendment I'm talking about has nothing to do with monument signs. It's only wall signs. And currently, everybody's allowed monument signs, and the FCO we're talking about has only 3 buildings, one of which already has a monument sign. So I'm not sure where on Telegraph you're going to be driving and looking for options for them to put up monument signs. That's why I'm confused.
And you need X amount of space to put one in anyway. And I don't
Correct.
think the space would even I don't even think there's enough space there.
In fact, to address your concern about Rusty Bucket, I feel like Rusty Bucket is so close to the road, they wouldn't have physical space between
think
where
they
they are and where the right-of-way begins to actually squeeze in a
It would
monument
never
sign.
be high enough to cover what they've already got up
Yeah.
on the building anyway.
It's pretty well signed as a
Yeah.
business. And I would say, now that we allowed, you have allowed the Thai place to have a sign on the south side, that building, or the two tenants in that building are fairly well signaged also. I mean, I can't say that they would never ask for a monument, but I think that they're well-placed and fairly visible. That's just that's my observation.
And as far as, I'd have to double-check, but as far as I remember, if you were concerned about Telegraph as a whole, I'm pretty sure all the buildings that can have monument signs already do.
I think only one does not.
Yeah. So if your concern is with monument signs popping up
But
all
if we
over, we
take
have...
these restaurants out of the commercial district rules and have their own set of rules, as that's what I'm understanding.
Then they would have the same limitation they have right now, which is one monument sign.
And it would only be for those few restaurants and
Or-
those few
yeah.
buildings.
Yeah. Or, again, if the council feels like we don't need to let the outlot buildings have monument signs, you can certainly draft the FCO standard to say monument signs are prohibited in the FCO. That's completely within the realm of your
And yet we already have one, so that would
governance.
almost be,
I mean, it would be a bit of a headache for the Qdoba building because they already have one, so they would probably be just grandfathered in with that.
They would be.
But if you're really worried about the outlot buildings having monument signs, we can certainly make the new FCO section of the sign ordinance include a caveat that they don't need monument signs because they're already there. Their wall signs are the monument signs technically. So I see what you're saying. The reason I wasn't concerned about the monument signs is because there was really not that much opportunity for them left in the village.
and there may not even be enough room.
Yeah.
But I would guess I would like to just drive by and take a look at the
Absolutely.
room,
Yeah.
rather than moving on this as a motion tonight.
That's
And-
fine, but I just want to be clear that we're talking about wall signs.
Correct.
Right.
This is wall.
Well, I mean,
This is wall
we are
signs.
talking about FCO
So-
overall, so it could include governance on monument signs as well. Another thing about, I want to mention to you about the motion, if we do tell Dirk to draft language that's not written in stone, there's going to have to be a public hearing and a first reading and a second reading, and basically this would be a draft he would bring back next time, and we can have a working text to then correct or edit or update. So, just something to keep in mind as we continue the discussion.
So we'd be starting a fairly lengthy process anyway.
Yeah, this, an ordinance amendment takes at
Right.
least 3 meetings because we would make a motion to draft language, then there would be a first reading. If there are changes to that, there would be a second reading and a vote. So,
There would
And
not,
we
there
can
would not
also
be a
see-
public hearing.
or I apologize, yes,
That's
public
right,
hearings
right.
are for zoning ordinances.
right.
Those are the two.
And the other option is we just let it stay the way it is,
Right.
Correct.
Right.
because all the changes have already been done on the buildings. So at that point, it'd be a,
Oh, the Thai restaurant has been approved, so
Yeah.
is that what your point, Dee?
But when the Thai restaurant goes away 10 years from now,
yeah.
Yeah, right.
Or any
next door
tenant
building,
moves out.
Yeah, I mean, whatever possibility may
So
exist.
they just come in front of the ZBA at that point,
right.
repeat what we did tonight.
Well, so the reason I'm proposing this amendment is so that we wouldn't have to slow down a business wanting to open in the village by a month because they have to come to the ZBA
Right.
and ask for a variance when we can modify the ordinance to just allow them to have the signs that we're clearly okay with if we're okay granting the variance.
Right.
Right. Hang on.
No, I want to talk about wall signs, okay?
Yes, sir.
So there's at least 2 subjects here. One is what you've described as the variance we just gave. And I agree, you should just change the ordinance. Otherwise, this will come up again, and it doesn't make any sense for us to be giving a variance to something that we know we'll give a variance to again if it comes up no matter when. So my view is, at some point, we should ask Dirk to change that ordinance. The second one that's completely different, that I was maybe missing the point in your memo, is the size of the wall sign. And so, am I reading it correctly that these were rejected because they were too big? And we made them make smaller signs to comply?
They haven't resubmitted yet because they're fighting with Jimmy John's corporate to get approval on the new smaller designs. And
Okay, so this could change their need to fight with Jimmy John's corporate if we made a change, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I think if I read this, I guess it makes some sense, but I'm still confused. I don't understand, like in Bingham Farms, you've got 12% height. I understand 12% of height, 15% of width, that's easy. I don't understand what 2.5 inches means. I don't understand what that is in parentheses underneath the 12% height. And
Chart?
yeah,
Sure.
and I think. Because the 12% height.
Oh, I apologize. That was a typo. That was supposed to be 2.5 feet, not
Okay.
2.5 inches.
Yeah, this 2.5
A little spinal tap
inches, we
snafu there.
definitely have a problem, yeah. So, okay. But I would say also,
Way through it, yeah.
I would say also, for me, I would like to see what the measurements of this building actually are. So we could say, using these different standards, what size the sign would be. Because the size of the wall, the height and width, is going to determine how big the sign is.
Sure.
So before we change an ordinance, we need to make sure we know what we're
Right.
doing.
So another thing I want to point out is most sign ordinances, and I'll be honest, I didn't read ours front to back, so I don't know if ours has that. I would imagine it has somewhere. Most sign ordinances include text like, wall signs should not cover up windows or doors.
Right.
Wall signs should not extend past the roof line.
Right.
Some ordinances that I was reading through when I was looking at what other communities do have definition in their sign ordinance for a sign bar, well, basically, it's the space between the first and, imagine Birmingham, the space between the first floor windows and the second floor.
Right.
That's their sign bar. That's where they're limited to place the signs. So, given that, if you look at something like the Jimmy John's building, well, okay, if they want a big sign and they can't cover up the doors or the windows, they're limited on how high they can
Agreed.
go.
Yeah.
Same with the roof.
Agreed. But they obviously wanted a bigger sign than we were willing to allow them,
Correct.
which
But
is causing them problems.
this is the bigger sign.
Oh, that is the bigger sign.
This is the bigger sign because it's too big by 6 inches. It's 6 inches bigger than the 12% limit.
Did they know that when they made it?
I assume when they submitted that, they were going off of the fact that they have the identical signs to what they proposed on the building right now. Because, again, those signs were approved, I think, around the same time as Noodles and Company.
That's right.
Despite the fact that we had this limitation in the ordinance.
That's 3 feet 1 inches.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you
So again,
exactly.
I don't know, because I might do the calculation with one of these other towns' requirements, and it may be even a smaller sign. I just don't know without seeing what a height and a width is.
So I would say the biggest sign submission I've seen is the one that I gave you for Royal Thai. This was their original telegraph-facing sign submission. Now, this one is quite large, because if you did the percentage calculation, this one I think comes out to almost 30% of the building height. But in my opinion, that doesn't look out of place on that building. It matches the shape, it matches the open space they have there. I think it would be a great way to advertise from Telegraph for cars going 50 miles an hour. So that's the reason I'm looking at the size, because right now, we have that 12 and 15% limit on the height and width respectively. The square footage limit is 200 square feet.
Which is a big
Because
sign.
again, we're going off of the 4-story buildings. If we switch to, again, the standard proposed by many ordinances, which is 1 square foot per 1 linear foot of frontage, Jimmy John's is 46 feet frontage, which means they'd be allowed a 46 square foot sign. Depending on, we don't have height width regulations, but then it's up to the business owner to be creative with their sign, and they get to.
So the Jimmy John's hadn't opened yet?
No, they're there. They've been there for years.
They've been there forever, so.
Yeah.
They're like revamping.
They just want to
Okay.
rebrand, they're getting updated signage and,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think all Jimmy John's are going through sort of like a revamp.
Yeah.
And so they wanted the new sign. Well, what was there was there. It was approved at one point.
Yeah.
Well, now that they are getting sort of reapproved, it's come to light that it's 6 inches too big.
Yeah.
And so
We need to look at the ordinance, in my opinion.
We're
I
just-
agree with you.
proposing, again,
Yeah.
along that vein of, we're not trying to make life harder
Right.
for our businesses. We're trying to support the businesses. And so to sort of tie their hands at this point and, make them wait even longer.
Just curious, because I would be the person that would ultimately have to draft this. Does staff have a recommendation in terms of square footage, height, width? I mean, obviously, the placement standard's easy. We don't need it only over entry facades, because nobody else has that.
Right.
But in terms of the square footage or the height, width, I mean, is there a thought in terms of?
Again, based on what I saw in other ordinances, they don't have a height or width limit. Some of them do. By the way, a note, I made the same typo on Northville. That's 6 and 3 foot, not inches. But yeah, they don't have any height or width restrictions. They have restrictions on placement, so you can't have those, above the roof billboard style signs. They have limitations on how much they can extend into the right of way if they're hanging off the wall, which a lot of places do. I would imagine we probably have a caveat about that somewhere. Other than that, they depend on businesses to make nice signs for themselves to attract customers in a pleasant fashion. And from having been to all the places that I've used it as an example in my chart here, I've never seen a sign that was egregiously large or out of line, in my opinion. So they clearly seem to not have an issue without having a height and width limitation.
So the Royal Thai cuisine, that was approved?
The one that I just handed out to you, neither of them were even reviewed by a planning commission because they were denied in my preliminary review. I told them that they're in violation of the ordinance, which means if you went in front of the planning commission, you would most likely be denied based on our current ordinances. So they went back to redesign. So Royal Thai approved, got a sign approved that's identical to the one you approved today, but on the Telegraph side. Today they asked for a variance for that one on the south side.
Because in looking at this, it is rather large.
It is. But again, I don't think it's out of place facing Telegraph.
Are they open?
No.
No, not yet. They have a temporary sign, but last time I drove by, they didn't have an open door.
You're talking about that Thai restaurant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say something from my own experience. I've often, after I passed them, wished I could figure out a way to get in to frequent one of those restaurants. You're moving along on Telegraph, and it's, so I think these guys have a real challenge in getting people to come in their front door who don't work in those buildings and can get to them easily. But for a passerby or a random person coming through Telegraph Road, I think these guys have a real hard time attracting those kind of customers because it's gone. Before you even know it, it's gone, and you're past it. So that's the problem with a lot of these out-property restaurants. You pass it before you can get into it. So anything that we can do to try to make them feel better about being in Bingham Farms, I'm for.
I would agree. I think we need to give the property owners and the business owners a little bit of credit for the fact that they do need to attract business that's going 50 miles an hour down Telegraph.
Right.
The original intention was to mostly service the big office buildings, which are now struggling. So, they're not going to want to put something up there. I mean, it's not just like you know, Mr. John's sitting there. It's a corporation, like, they know what they're doing. They're gonna wanna make their businesses look, you know, good and attractive and, but, yes, be big enough to where when you're going down the road, you can see it.
So actually another note, because, sir, you were asking about kind of visualizing the height, width, and square footage, right? So if you look at the two examples I gave you for both
It
Jimmy
does have-
John's and
does it
Royal
have
Thai,
dimensions on there?
they include
Yeah.
square footage in
Okay,
here.
good.
And the Jimmy John's sign that I said was over by just a handful of inches in the height, that's proposed square footage of 27.55 square feet. Even if we did 1 square foot per linear foot of frontage, they'd be way under their 46 square feet to this. Now, Royal Thai, this big one, D, you were correct, it is quite large. That one comes out to, I think, 70 square feet. I did some quick math earlier today because I was curious. I have a little asterisk on the Birmingham ordinance here, where on Woodward, they expand their 1 square foot per linear foot to 1.5 square feet per linear foot to allow, because like Diane pointed out, cars moving 50 miles an hour are going to have a hard time catching that sign in time. If we were to allow Royal Thai 1.5 square foot per linear foot,
That'd be okay.
70 square feet is just about their limit.
Yeah.
So, just to give you food for thought, using these two examples.
Yeah, that helps.
So I think, I mean, what do we need to do tonight to not hold these businesses up further? Is it gonna make a difference?
I mean, I think as far as, I haven't heard anything from Jimmy John's about their progress with corporate, and, you know, we obviously shouldn't be making a ordinance amendment based on just one business. Obviously, the faster we can get the ordinances updated, the easier it's gonna be for any potential businesses, because, just to throw it out there, DeBella's is closed, they have a for lease sign. When somebody decides they want that space, they're gonna need a sign. And, you know, again, I don't want to have to hold them up by having to go to a variance because they want a sign that's a few inches bigger than what we allow for. One of the things we can do is, again, if we have some ideas that we're happy with and some that we want to think about, we can direct Dirk to start drafting language on the stuff we feel comfortable with. And then at the next meeting, if somebody drove down Telegraph and said, you know what, I had new ideas about how I want to change the monument sign section of it, then we can hear it next month and add that to the text.
Because what I'm saying is, your signs are flat on the building, which means when you're coming down the road, if you're not looking right out your side door, you're not seeing that name. Whereas a monument sign, as you're coming closer, you can see things on the monument signs.
Sure.
So,
The caveat there is our ordinance does not allow logos on monument signs, but it does on wall signs. So companies that are likely to be in these outlet buildings, they tend to have more
yeah.
either interactive or logo or, you know, more
I can-
colorful sign.
I can take a stab at it.
Sure.
I think, just from my opinion, maybe mirroring something similar to what Birmingham does makes the most sense, which also seems to be consistent with what Northville does and with what Beverly Hills does. So I could take a shot at it. If
I mean,
you want.
I feel personally, obviously, I'm one of 7, but I think we should try to get this started. I am concerned about timing for our businesses, you know, and all that's going on behind the scenes for somebody like Jimmy John's, you know, to make it 6 inches smaller. I mean, it's,
Would there ever be enough of a change that you go back to Jimmy John's and say, forget getting corporate to approve it, your big sign's going to be okay? I mean,
If the opinion at the table is in agreement with me that we need to do away with the percentage limitations, then that's basically what I can let them know as soon as tomorrow. And we can deal with that as we go.
I
with
feel like
others.
that's an appropriate angle for us to take, being, again, that we are trying so hard to support these businesses. Evgeny's done a great job. I mean, this is, you know, economic development coordinator work at its best, trying to work with these businesses to facilitate business and what's easy, and, you know, it had to be done because the sign that was there was not conforming. But, you know, I just think about all the legal and the corporate and the, you know, that's going around and around and around because 6 inches in Bingham Farms. I mean, it's you know, I don't want to just, you know, open the floodgates, but I think if we start the process and get this going, that will also show goodwill, again, toward our businesses, that, you know, we are taking this seriously and we are moving to be a little bit more accommodating, but not outrageous. I mean, this is, you know, I don't think anybody's asking
And so going
anything
to Jimmy
that's crazy.
John's and saying your big sign's okay is not in any way going to cause Royal Thai people to get upset by their need for...
I doubt it.
Okay.
My only question about expediting the Jimmy John's thing would be actually to Dirk. Would it be okay from a legal standpoint if council knows that we're moving towards amending the ordinance to remove these limitations? Would it be acceptable for council to let planning commission know that even though Jimmy John's might come to them with a sign that's a little bit bigger than the currently allowable thing, we encourage them to approve it because a change is coming?
You can't approve until the changes come.
Got it, okay.
You can tell them what the track is, but you can't approve until the
Okay.
change has been made.
So that's still going to be the stopgap there, so all the more reason to kind of get moving.
And as for now, we're not moving on behalf of Jimmy John's. However, Jimmy John's has signage. They're open. It's not like they're not there. It's
Right.
not like no one knows. I mean, they just want to rebrand. So they can live with what they've got for a few more months while we deal with this.
I can at least tell them to stop pestering.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right, I was gonna say, yes, and that's true. Jimmy John's here is fine. I just think that if we can let corporate have a heads up that we are in process, I'd hate to have them go through all of this and change it, and then we're like, oh, we just made it bigger, you know, thanks for nothing. Like, I just, again, I'm trying to keep this relationship open and, you know, and be as helpful as we can. So if we can let them know it hasn't been changed, we can't pre-approve something
Right.
when nothing's been changed legally, which is what I'm hearing Dirk say.
That's correct.
But we can say, we started the process,
Right.
and here's how long the process is likely to take. If you guys want to wait for however long it takes, you know, 6 months or less, then this is the direction we're heading. There's no guarantees, but this is the direction that we're heading.
I agree. I think it's, I mean, Jimmy John's is a big company, so the conversation we're having here, they're having in their company too, going, well, if I give this guy the okay to use a smaller sign, but that's not to our corporate standard, then it's going to have a trickle-down effect on the other 5,000 Jimmy John stores around the world, and they'll just say no,
Right, right,
and that's not good.
right, right.
I agree.
So, Dirk, do you know, are you clear on your,
I have a sense
on
of
what we're
things.
asking? Do you want to read it back to us and make sure?
Well, a couple of things. In terms of the square footage standard, I think I was thinking about going along the lines of what Birmingham, Beverly Hills, and Northville's doing. With the height width standard, I'm sensing that maybe we don't want that at all. Although you may want to think about a 4-foot standard, which seems 4 feet is what you see in most communities that I represent.
Okay.
But again, I think you also want to include something not over windows, not extending beyond the roof line, get rid of the only entry facade requirement. I think something like that would be the guts of an ordinance that we could at least talk about,
Okay.
if that's okay. It doesn't mean, you know, you can't change it when it's all before you, but
Right.
it's a start.
The other thing is that the gal here from the Troy Sign Company, I would think that these folks face the legal challenges of signage every single day.
Oh, they do.
And
That's
your-
right.
Has your research, have you reached out to them about what they can say would be a good standard that they see is enforceable? and yet-
As a company that deals with regulations, I would imagine their ideal answer is no regulation. That's why I'm going off of
I
what
know,
other
I
communities
know.
have to
No, no, I
protect
don't
their
know.
interests.
No, I don't know.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
absolutely
fine.
right. That would be their answer.
But, well, it depends, you know.
Maybe not. I don't-
Yeah.
Okay, so I need a motion.
Do we
Right,
need a motion,
to
Dirk, or can you just kind
proceed?
of go with it?
I can just kind of go with it.
You don't need a motion to
No.
ask you,
Yeah.
direct you to, okay. Okay. All right, great. So then, do you think this will be something that we'll see next month?
If you want it next
Or-
month, I'll get it to you next month. Yeah, absolutely.
I think the sooner the better for us to keep moving forward. Thank you.
Not a problem.
And then are we directing Yev to contact the Jimmy John's people to give them, or to say that your concerns about our ordinance have really got us thinking, and we have gone back to the drawing board, and we're going to try to work more in favor of
I
what
think
you
that's
need?
good.
I can't promise anything, but just to let you know, don't kill yourselves over trying to reach our current ordinance, because
I can certainly give them the good news.
Yeah, you're in contact with them
Yep.
pretty
We would be
regularly.
happy to hear that.
Yeah.
okay, no promises, but just
Right.
Right.
give them a breath of fresh air.
Okay, next is the roads reconstruction plan. This came up at our organizational meeting, and sorry, I had to stop that conversation because it wasn't on the agenda. And we always want to make sure we've made a concerted effort to have all roads discussions recorded. That meeting was not recorded, this meeting is recorded, but trustee McAlexander, you had started the conversation, so do you want to sort of let us know what you were thinking, and we'll see where it goes?
Well, my question at the organization meeting was, because I guess I was sworn in that night, so, but how up till that point was the council envisioning the oversight of this project? And that's kind of where it stopped because we didn't want to have a conversation about it. But again, as being part of it, DE was part of it as well, the whole roads committee thing. I'd still like to try to get an understanding of what has been thought about up to this point, or just have a discussion about it either way.
I can help a little, and I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at HRC's letter and their schedule. That's pretty helpful. And we also, full disclosure, Ken and I had a conversation with Brad Shepler, and we've already adopted the first resolution, which is a resolution instructing the engineers to prepare the report that's required by our ordinance. Chapter 30 of our village code requires certain things happen. That's the first step, and that report should be done by the middle of February, hopefully the beginning of February, but at the worst case scenario, the middle of February. So with that in mind, the next thing that council is going to be asked to do is at the January meeting, I will be bringing to you a resolution asking you to schedule the first public hearing. There's 2 public hearings that have to happen. One is the hearing on necessity. That's the first one. The second one is a hearing confirm the special assessment role. So, but you have to actually have a resolution setting the public hearing. So that will be brought to you in January with the idea that the report will be ready by no later than the middle of February. We'll schedule the public hearing in February, the first public hearing. And then once that happens, then you will see they're going to go out to bids with the hopes of starting construction in June through September, I think is what it said, June through September, or June through October, I don't recall which one. But starting in June at any rate. So you would likely see the resolution for the second public hearing. You will hold the second public hearing in May if HRC is able to still keep that plan. So things are going to start happening pretty rapidly. You're in a holding pattern now. You can't do anything more. At least the council can't do anything more until you've got that report, which is required by your ordinance. And Brad had indicated that the report would be ready at the beginning to mid-February, which would enable us to have the first public hearing in February. So it should work. The timing that they've laid out in their letter should work. So that's a little bit of background. I'm not sure, Eric, if that's,
No, go ahead, Kathy, because thank you, but I do have some more
Yeah.
questions, Jeff.
How much time will trustees have to review the work that HRC is providing before we do a hearing?
well, I mean, you wouldn't have long, a couple of weeks, probably 2 weeks. Assuming that, because there's a requirement that you've got to, once the report is done, it has to be filed with the village clerk, and so that anybody in the public can look at it before you hold the first public hearing. It wouldn't be the end of the world, I suppose, if you schedule the first public hearing for March,
Yeah.
which would give you more time to look at it. I wouldn't go much beyond March, but I think we could still make everything work so they could begin construction by June,
Right.
even with the March public hearing. So
I agree.
whether it's February or March, that can be worked out.
Well, I think it's important that we have time to review and discuss.
Digest. Yeah.
So I guess looking at the timing in the letter, that's like between the presentation to Village Council January 27th and then advertisement for bidding March 11th is what they're proposing.
Yeah,
So that's, in that window is where we would have to do our work, right?
it would not be presented to you at January 27th. It would be presented at a February meeting.
Okay. I know this was their proposed timing, but I'm just,
Right.
it's in that time range that, or in that between step, well, whatever you want to call them, step 6 and 7 or something here.
Right,
That's when we
the
would do our
only
work.
thing is if you had the first public hearing in March, it would back up the bidding by about 3 weeks.
Yeah. So we'll have to work through the micro details of
Right.
our timing within their timing.
We would just need to know by January, whether to hold the first hearing on necessity in February or March. So
Would we want to do a special assessment meeting
Good.
so we could have time to go over, because I'm assuming we can't really have a meeting without fairly hard numbers.
Mhm.
Well, you won't have fairly hard numbers until you've accepted a bid, until you've seen the bids and awarded a bid.
We'll have
You'll have estimated numbers.
estimated numbers,
Right, you won't, and to say the market, to say that things are volatile is an understatement.
No.
I mean, I'll give you an example. In Bloomfield Township, they're doing Bloomfield Village in phases, and the cost from one phase to another phase, which is only separated by about a year and a half, was significant. Tens of thousands of dollars difference. So, yeah, it's fine to estimate it, but until the actual
Yeah.
bid
One of
comes
the
in.
reasons I'm anxious to get this going,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
And you might note in page 1 of the proposal, which was approved in September, is 3.765 million.
Right.
And I would hope that's the ceiling.
Is that phase one only, that 3.7?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's all of the,
It's north.
that's all of
I think
the
north of
streets that are in the
North of
paragraph
13.
Above there.
That's one question, and you may have just answered it, Ken. Does the $3.765 million include the $680,000?
It does, yes, it does.
And then that makes
Abundantly
sense.
clear at that September meeting.
Yeah. It says total project, so I assume that. But if I could ask Dirk maybe Dirk, whoever. So the reason we're having public hearings is because of special assessment district, correct?
Yes, yeah. As you may recall, there's two pieces of funding. Part of it's the mill that was approved at the time you approved the budget, and then the other part of it is the special assessment district. So you got those two revenue components, basically, if you will. And your ordinance at Chapter 30 requires that you have two public hearings. Hearing on necessity, which is basically approving the district, and then a hearing confirming the roll, which is after the bids have been awarded. That actually approves how much each property is going to be assessed.
Yeah.
I know the discussion was and I may get the number wrong, but I thought it was like $500 a year
That's right, yeah.
per parcel, but, that's dependent on all the estimates that were done. Maybe when you get the bids back, it's a different number. And the only way you know that is to get the bids back. So, but yes, your answer is yes.
Okay, but that's part of the oversight. Oversight could be who's going to look over HRC's shoulder. But when you have a public hearing, there's going to be, I suppose, people from the public asking questions like, well, I live on Woodland Drive, I live on Bingham Court, I live in Bingham Point, and they're all on private roads. Am I being assessed $500 or not? My house driveway, my address is 14 Mile, my address is 13 Mile. Am I being assessed or not? Those are one of a number of frequently asked questions that could come forward.
And I think the answers have been somewhat talked about and approved. And again, forgive me, like I told Ken this afternoon, I don't know the specifics of how each property is going to be assessed, but I think my recollection is there are some private roads that are going to be especially assessed.
Yes, a lot of them.
Right.
Yeah.
That was my recollection, and that was approved by the village council.
Okay, and that's fine, but just I guess just the thought process of how you prepare for those questions, because I think the council has already agreed to do it, but they have to give the public a chance to voice
Absolutely.
concerns, and maybe have legitimate concerns that need to be answered.
And one more thing too, in this first phase project, as Lisa and I have discussed, there's also a $1.2 million loan that's involved in there. Or $1.5 million loan.
It's 1.5, but it may even be more,
Okay.
maybe 2. SIB allows for up to 2 million to be borrowed.
Which would help then maybe bring down the the assessment too, which might help.
Good, yeah. But so much of it is really dependent on what the bid comes,
Yeah.
what kind of bids you're
What the
looking at.
numbers are.
Yeah.
So we haven't locked into place the 500. I mean, that's kind of a number that's been
I think that was the estimate.
tossed around.
And that was the hope.
the recommendation
That was when you guys
came.
brought up to just kind of,
Right.
okay, we're gonna throw this number in because we don't know where else to go.
Right, so that's a
Well,
good.
I think it was a little more than that, actually. I think it was, because many models were run about, how much people should pay, depending on the road they lived on, how much the road was going to cost, how many linear feet the road was. So there's a lot of work that went on to finally come to a point, because the politics of it were, I live on a private road, I live on a public road. I live on a private road, I already have to pay for my own road maintenance, I don't want to pay any more than that. So there was a way to at least have a common ground that when you have a public hearing, you're going to be able to say, everybody's participating, and the people on the public roads are participating at even a greater level than the others because of the special assessment. And the $500 was really trying to say, making sure that it wasn't such a burden on people that you would really have a problem with the public, and wasn't so small, but the people that live on public roads, or wasn't so small that the people on private roads had a great objection. So I don't know what the right number is either, DE, but I think it's probably in that range.
I mean, and
Yeah.
look, even if let's assume the bid comes back higher than the estimate, you could keep the $500 number. You
Yeah.
just have to find
Other money.
another way of funding the difference. Right,
It's money,
exactly.
That's right.
Well, we got
Come on, Bill.
40,000. 40,000.
But the point I'm trying to make is you could stick with the 500, you just have to find a different way.
You just got to find the
Right.
money, that's right.
Right.
But the 500, we never voted on the 500.
No.
We have not voted on the
No,
500 yet.
no, that
so-
was just the number that was talked about.
Right, right. I just want to make that clear.
Right.
For,
The proposal was adopted as a framework.
Right.
The actual number was not settled. And in fact, I would say this, that when it was discussed and settled in June, I don't know that the discussion regarding the private roads that feed into Bingham Road was even part of the discussion.
It wasn't.
Okay.
right.
So that's another determination that really has to be made by this body.
Yeah, so we are going to have to decide at some point, those private roads that feed in, how are they going to be assessed? Is it, $500 for everybody in there, and you're going to divide it, and everybody's going to pay $20? Or is it going to be somewhere in between, is it going to be $250 per house? Is it gonna be $500 per
Yeah,
house?
exactly. But those are the kind of things I'm talking about.
Right, we still have to have all those discussions.
Yeah.
Yep.
And perhaps the public hearings might fuel some of those feelings or decisions that you all make.
Pretty sure, actually.
But the next thing you will see will be a proposed resolution at your January meeting to pick the day that you want to schedule the public hearing, whether it's in February or March. That's the next thing you'll see.
Okay.
Are there any other questions about the roads then? It's, on our agenda, it's just road reconstruction plan, so.
Lisa, you mentioned a special update through the month, or for the website, or the newsletter special website.
We're gonna have another, roads newsletter go out
When is that going to go out?
by the
Before
end of the,
Christmas.
yeah.
Oh, before
By the end of the
Christmas.
year, yeah.
Okay,
And so, and that'll be mailed directly again right to each house.
okay.
And it'll include some of the stuff that's, some of the facts that we've gathered, as well as some of the new information that we've gathered. Just, there's still a lot that we don't know, but trying to keep it on people's radar that it's coming. Dirk, I did have one question. If we decide on a special assessment amount, say $500,
Yeah.
for District 1, could it be different for District 2?
Yes,
Okay.
because as I mentioned, the costs, even though it appears that it should be the same, may not be the same. Even if they're separated by even a year, the costs could be
Keep
radically
going higher.
different. So yes, it can be different.
Okay,
And that would be the reason why.
great. Did you have your question answered? Yeah? Okay. I know there's still a lot more questions
There's
to
a
be
lot of
answered, but
questions,
yes.
yeah.
Yep, and there probably will be for a long time.
Yeah.
But we're gonna answer as many as we can, and we're trying to pace it so that we don't get too far ahead of ourselves, because there's so much information to absorb that we want to make it make sense, that it's sequential. And also, there's things that are changing, so we don't want to get too far into the weeds on discussions on something that could change significantly in the future. But again, every discussion we've had about the roads has been recorded. So was either the resident group, those meetings were recorded, and every discussion we've had has been recorded. So anybody everybody's encouraged to go back and look at those meetings. So, if there's no more questions, then we are going to move on to the treasurer's report. No?
Good evening again. So Treasurer's Report, item number 7 on the agenda. There's 2 items that make up, sub-items that make up the Treasurer's Report. The first one is check disbursements and approving of the bills as a motion. So in your packet, I've detailed out the check disbursement report from the time frame of October 29th, 2024 through today, November 25th, 2024. Out of the general fund, we've dispersed $204,205.51. And under the gas and weight fund for the same time frame, same dates, we've dispersed $1,860 even, and it was one invoice, and it was for Johnson Landscaping. The total amount of disbursements for the bills are $206,065.51. So if there's any questions that you have regarding the bills, I'd be happy to answer them prior to council taking action on the motion.
Small item. The
Sure.
$361 Glass Law Group, can explain that that's for a lawyer showing up at someone who gets a ticket for speeding, for example?
Yes, yes. So to answer your question, we have two attorney firms, one that Dirk is from, that handles business within the village, contracts and things, and Glass Law, who are litigators, that if someone has a ticket or if someone launches a suit because something happens, and they include the village within that litigation, they represent us as the village. They also represent the other villages within Southfield Township. I know that they actually represent Franklin. I'm not sure about Beverly Hills, but they're the attorneys or the firm that goes to the courts and deals with litigation that has to deal with any type of, traffic violation, moving violation, any type of suit that happens within the village out of basically traffic ordinances.
Putting it another way, we're the general counsel, our firm, and they're the prosecutors. That'd be
Yes.
another way of looking at it.
So if somebody gets a $200 ticket for speeding, who gets the money from that ticket?
The village does. So the county collects it, it goes to them, and then they end up sending us back a portion of that, the fee or the ticket proceeds, if you will, or the fine. And I get that from the 46th District Court, and it comes every couple of months. They'll send us a check along with a list that says, all right, here's what the revenue is between this month and this month that we collected for fines and traffic fees.
Some of it is kept by, a
Yes.
percentage is kept by the court.
Absolutely.
It's not 100%, but it's our share that they forward to us.
If it costs $360 to send a lawyer, and we're only going to get a piece of the $200 ticket, do we have to send a lawyer for that? Or can't we just let the judge of the court, call the police officer on the stand and say, did you give him a ticket? And, not
Without getting too
represent
much into the
ourselves.
weeds, so when you get a ticket, there's two things you can do. You can have an informal hearing, which means that there's no lawyers involved. You just go before a magistrate. But if they request a formal hearing, that generally means they're going to bring an attorney to defend them in the ticket. And if you don't have an attorney, you're going to lose. So,
I see your point. It's like we're already losing.
Yeah.
We haven't even gotten into court yet.
Hold on, just so we're not talking about made-up numbers. The 300 whatever that we paid to Glass Law is an actual number. The 200 you just proposed for the ticket is a number you said for a single ticket. That's the amount we pay him for a month worth of tickets.
right.
For them
The
to
amount we
appear.
make for that same amount is way more than we pay him, just to be clear.
It's thousands of dollars a year, but don't we
Yes.
also take that money and invest it in a new vehicle for the department?
We purchase
Yeah.
one new vehicle for Bingham Franklin Police Department once every, I believe it's 4 years. What, 4 years? I thought it was 4 years.
Okay, yeah.
Do we have numbers on that, payback on those prosecution?
Yeah,
Fees versus-
Trustee Miller, if you want to, I can provide you with the details of what the checks are that we get for the 48th District Court, and also the invoicing from Glass Law that details each case number and case of how much time is spent by those attorneys. Yeah, absolutely. If you want that, you're more than welcome to come in, make an appointment, sit down, and I'll show you all the documentation in detail.
Well, and the police department's involved with this as well.
Correct.
I mean, this isn't just something that we just decide to send an attorney or not an attorney. The police department is very, this is part of their operating business as well. Because they're the ones giving the ticket. We don't give the tickets. The police department gives the tickets.
Yeah, they issue, correct.
So,
Law enforcement issues the ticket.
I think that's standard operating procedure to have the attorney there for those tickets that they're writing. So it's not like we could just say, oh, sorry, police department, we're not sending an attorney anymore.
Likewise, Glass Law would be there in court for the arraignment of the gentleman who was convicted of, or who has been arraigned of embezzling $100,000. You need to have somebody there for that.
Oh, sure.
Any other questions?
Any other questions on the bills? So is there a motion to approve the November 2024 bills?
I make a motion to approve the November 2024 bills.
I will second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next is the financial statements for October 2024.
Yes, financial statements, and it's made up of both two items, sub-items, if you will. The first one is the profit and loss from July through the end of October, so October 31st, 2024. That is also in your packet. For the new council members, let me just take a minute here and just go through. So what I do is I pull that for you. It's as of the end of October, and my standard is what I do is I look at each individual line item. Right now, we are 4 months into the new fiscal year, or 33%. So I go through and take a look at where each line item is, if there's anything that is outstanding, that kind of puts a flag up that says, you know, there's a reason, why are we spending more, why do we get more revenue, why has expense gone up? And then I also go back and look at it from last fiscal year. So on this perspective, I looked at November of last year compared to November of this year. We're tracking right along, and the same percentages. Actually, we're doing a little bit better this year. On the revenue side, it's due to the amount of interest that is performing very well where we have our investments, and the fact that we're just, you know, constantly looking for ways to save and save every penny that we can. I am very frugal in making sure when I use taxpayer money to use it is that we get the best bang for the buck, and I look for every discount, I look for every possible savings that we can, because it's the village's money, and that's what you guys, you know, as a fiduciary to it, I've got to make sure that's part of my job, is to make sure that we're looking at all that. So with that said, if you look just on page 2 of 4 for just the general fund on total expenditures, we're at 30.52% of the budget. Last year, we were at 30.51%. So we're tracking right in line. And again, if we're at 33% of the full year fiscal budget, there is some cyclical as far as when expenses go up or down during the year, but we're tracking exactly the way we should be. So I don't see any concerns there. Again, the one thing that I did point out and that I looked at is kind of a flag, is if you look at some of the interest line items under the revenue, they're much greater than where they were or what we budgeted, and that's because of some of the moves and positions that we took in various investments. So that is the first motion on the portion of the profit and loss. The second thing that that makes up the financial statements approval is the investment piece of it. We've broken this down, and it's in your packet as well. It's kind of spread out to 2 pages now. It used to all be able to be encompassed onto one. But under the general fund, we have a total of $5,094,220 is the total investment as of October 24. Everything is performing well. You can see the dates of maturity where if in fact it applies. The one thing that I did want to bring up is the very last line item under the general fund is a bond that's held through multi-bank securities that does a lot of investing for us. That bond is what was called a callable bond, which means that at any point in time it can be called. It was called late last week. The reason why bonds get called is they issue the bond in this case at 5.20%, and because interest rates are going down, they have the ability to refinance that bond. So they call it, they refinance it at a lower rate. So what we ended up doing is we've got our 5.2% for the time that we held it. They've called it, we've called that in, the proceeds came in, and now we've reinvested it, and you'll see that next month into a CD that I believe is at 4.1% for a year. And that was the best rate that we could get at that point in time. So I just wanted to point that out, that on that particular one, this is the first time it's happened, but sometimes bonds get called, and that's the situation with that last investment.
What was the term of that particular bond?
Well, everything is under a year.
That's what I read in your notes.
Yep. The last time, it just came up either the last council meeting or maybe the one prior to that, last month. So we went back and I looked. The only time the village has had anything longer than a 12-month period was, 2018, I believe it was. It was one bond from JP Morgan Chase that we had for a little bit longer, and then that actually ended up getting called or redone anyway. So it really wasn't outstanding for a very long time. The investment policy for the village doesn't preclude us from going over 12 months. The prior treasurers, and I have the same opinion, I like to keep it very shorter time frame, not real short, sometime where we could still have and gain that interest for a period of time, but I like the ability to be flexible and have the liquidity and not be tied up into something for 24, 36 months. I would never go like a 36-month term. We've got other vehicle options that are from day to day that are performing very well. If you notice the Huntington insured cash sweeps, that was at 5%. The Fed lowered the rate. It went down to 4.5, and now since the Fed took another action, it's now at 4.25. But it's still 4.25 is when I look at the market every day. I go out and look. I get information from all of our banks and all of our investment to say, all right, here's where our CDs are, here's where our money markets are, here's where all our vehicles of investments are as far as rates from multiple banks. And 4.25 right now, I'm very pleased with it. It's performing very well. To give you guys just a kind of a quick schematic, we have one under the Michigan Class Fund, which is performing at just shy of 5%. It's at 4.95%, 4.9536% to be exact. That one throws off we made $2,513.42 in interest just in the last month. Year to date, it has $26,844 in interest. So we're doing well. We're doing well. When our auditor presented the audit from last year, we've increased year over year in our interest. That's not to say that it's going to continue, but you know what? We'll continue to take advantage of that as long as we possibly can. And the market obviously dictates it. So if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer anything regarding either the roads fund or the general fund under the investment piece.
I think your investment strategy is working quite well, especially from the position of being a village treasurer to be conservative. You're doing a very good job, man.
Well, thank you, Trustee Alexander. As I used to say, when I worked in the private sector, you're only as good as your last job.
That's right.
So I'm only as good as my last investment, but I try to make sure that I'm looking out for the village and my fees. I always tell President Blackburn my mantra is to suppress and reduce expense and fees and to increase revenue from interest income. So we only have a couple levers that we can pull for revenue in the village. One of them is interest. The other is, taxes, fines, and fees. So other than talking to the chief and, requesting that they ticket more folks, but can't do that. But anyway, that's, we do the best that we can based upon what the market is. So, and making sure that we're cautious and we're not, going down to MGM and just betting it all on black or red, right? We can't do that.
We could buy some Bitcoin.
Yeah, no crypto.
We do need a motion.
Motion, yes, there is a motion that's in front of the
Motion to
council.
accept the financial statements for October 2024.
I will so move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Excuse me. We are going to go around. Trustee comments? Trustee Miller?
Yeah. I appreciate all the work you guys do in the office, getting us the materials. Is there any way we can get them a little earlier than Friday before the Monday?
No, I'm sorry, there is not. Putting these packets together is a major part of our job. And to change all of the deadlines and all the other on the submissions and things, I don't think so. It's possible, but I think you'll probably see that as we move forward, a lot of the stuff is very similar. And as you are familiar with some of the issues, they'll keep showing up again and again on the council agendas, along with the same portions of the packets. So I think it might be Greek now, but I think it'll be all translated within a few months. And I don't know if your your fellow trustees can attest to that, but I mean that's how I see it. That's how I learn from this stuff, is that when you see it on the agenda over and over again, like an ordinance amendment will have a first and a second reading at the very least. You get more familiar, you don't have to read the whole packet. So I would love to give it to you earlier, but I'm afraid it just can't happen.
Can we get part of a package? Like, for example, the Hubble-Roth document was a very extensive document. I mean, and you got it before Friday.
That was in your September packet, so you actually had that months ahead of time.
Okay.
But the one they're working on now is a lot of detail, especially with the water runoff and doing the survey work, property elevation. So if we could get that as soon as it's complete, it would be helpful.
Well, I don't want to tell them to rush it because everybody wants to see
No, they're
it.
not rushing it.
So,
That's not what I'm asking.
I will get it to you, when I get it, I will get it to you all.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
appreciated.
That's what we ask.
Yeah,
Because, yeah, that's,
when the minutes are taken, they're supposed to be posted or something within 8 days. Is
Yeah,
that-
you get those within 8 days.
yeah,
Do we get that
yeah.
on the 8th day?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I will just say one other thing about the packet is, oftentimes, the people that we're working with know the packets go out on Friday because the agenda has to be posted so many hours in advance. That agenda, from the beginning of the month to the end of the month, is constantly changing, depending on, when the sign request comes in, and we think it's coming in, it didn't come in, or we're tightening up some of the documents that came in. So it might sound easier to get it ahead of time, but a lot of times they're working on those packets on all Friday. And so the worst, thing would be to send something out or add something or take something away, and then it's not on the agenda, or the documents weren't complete, or that kind of thing. So I agree with Ken that as time goes on, and that's what I tried to say in our meeting, once you're on for 6 months at least, it's going to get easier. I mean, you've got 4 years to learn this stuff. You're not going to get it out of the gate. So I would just say, until you sort of get the rhythm of it all, I would just plan on the weekend before the meetings to just have some study time. There's a lot of homework, and being a council member isn't just showing up to a meeting once a month. There's a lot of stuff, especially with the roads, that's going to have to be taken care of during the month, and especially that weekend before our meetings. So just sort of plan on those weekends before the meetings to spend a lot of time reading. I guess is all I can say about that.
Well, if you can get pieces of it, as Diane was mentioning, ahead of time, I'd appreciate any pieces of it.
Right. It's just a lot easier said than done. And again, things change constantly. I'd hate to have things, I certainly don't want a document to come and I sit there for 3 hours and read it, and then they say, oh, wait a minute, they've sent something else, or some numbers have changed, or something has changed, and then all of a sudden we've got like multiple copies of the same document with different information in it. I think that would be like trying to juggle with 7 different people, a complete nightmare. It's important that when the packets come, they are as accurate as possible can be. And that's what they've done. So, yeah, like I said, you'll get the gist of it.
Okay.
Trustee McAlexander? Do you
No,
have
I'm
any
good.
comments?
Nope.
Nope,
Comments?
nothing.
Comments?
I have a reflection from the community. As these 3 gentlemen were on the ballot for being the trustees to fill 3 positions, there was not going to be a contested election. And people were saying, well, I don't know these guys. I have no idea who I'm going to vote for. And so we thought about that and sponsored an open house, if you would, that was underwritten by the HOA from Outland Trail and the HOA from the Bingham Lane folks. And there was a meeting on the 8th of October. It was held at the Northbrook Presbyterian Church, an open house in which people were invited to come and hear the comments, concerns, and ideas for the betterment of Bingham Farms and share those pieces with the trustees. So we've got a recap that I just put into an outline form that I would like to have submitted as a document with my trustee comments. But it deals with the area of communications, specifically council meetings, town hall gatherings, contact information, and newsletter, and the scope of those things in the newsletter. Also, citizen involvement and advisory committees, it deals with that area. And it talks about the preservation of our village and specifically long-term infrastructure planning and the care and preservation of what we have as far as our environment. And so I would like to submit this document, which I will pass on to Yev. And there were 40 to 45 people in attendance. And by the way, the First Presbyterian Church was extraordinarily gracious in providing their facility for this event. And it's a very large facility. And as we talk about a place for the SAD meetings that will be more than this council chamber, that might be something for us to take a look at. They were very willing and encouraging for members of the community to use their space.
Nothing? No, oh, no.
You're next.
No.
Just two things. At the
Well said.
BDAC meeting, Bill brought some very detailed stuff to them to get approval for the monies that they're going to give us. And what was terrific is Bill just outlined everything beautifully, and they had absolutely no comments. So it ran through beautifully. Second thing is, in the next village newsletter, if we could get a picture of these three new guys in there, it'd be terrific.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good idea.
And that's all I have.
Trustee Hagman, I just want to let you know, the check was received today and it's deposited at the bank.
Excellent.
15 minutes after you have put it on my desk, so
Excellent.
the money's in the
The
bank.
money's in the bank. Super.
The only comment I have about the Meet the Candidate, you mentioned that it was underwritten by the HOAs.
Not underwritten, well, they were the sponsors, if you would.
So they need to put that, you need to put that on your finance, campaign finance committee forms. Any monies that were spent for your campaign need to be
I
submitted.
didn't spend any personal money.
There was no money.
They didn't
It's
spend
a
it.
They
gift,
did
that's
not?
an in-kind gift. And so those need to all be documented correctly on your campaign finance committee reports before
Would
you
you agree
submit
with
those.
It is, certain in-kind gifts should be reported on campaign, whoops,
Generally, what amount?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I do know the Michigan Campaign Finance Act does talk about certain in-kind contributions. Some are exempt, but some should be included, so you have to look at the statutes.
I think for my campaign, I remember the number was more than $500.
I don't know the number off the top of my head.
It could change.
And the venue was gratis. It
Yeah,
was free.
no
Right.
charge.
I just know from my campaign that anything like the mailing, all of those types of costs, if it goes over, I believe it's $1,000,
That's what I thought
you
it
flip
was.
into another category, but anything under that $1,000 still needs to be reported.
Expenses weren't even close to that, so.
No.
They're
I'm
very
saying if it's
marginal.
over $1,000, you flip into
Right.
another category, under $1,000 still
We
needs
still
to
need to
be.
report.
Yeah, but I think it's
Disclosed.
still, there's a 500, if you're under $500. But I'll check.
You
I
can
have
look
the
into it.
documents at home.
Okay. Look into it.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have to campaign, so I didn't spend any money.
Right, but let's just
No,
say,
I understand what
you know,
you're
I want to
saying,
give
but
you a
yeah.
gift.
Yeah,
Like, put it into the stratosphere,
Yeah,
right? This is
yeah.
how they keep things, people not giving gifts
yeah.
and, you know, keeping things on the straight and narrow.
Well, I'd like to know the statute before I file anything.
What was the gift?
Cookies and
The
juice.
cookies and,
The mailing, the printing, the postage,
Yeah.
yeah.
all of that
Yeah.
would be counted. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
You're good.
9:07, meeting adjourned. Oh, I'm sorry.